So in this lesson, we're going to take a look at solving linear equations. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the steps listed out, and as we go through every step, we'll look at an example that explains the steps as we go. So the equation we're going to look at today is 3 parentheses x plus 2 minus 5 parentheses x minus 1 is equal to 2 parentheses x plus 1. So the first thing you should always do in any equation is clear all fractions or decimals. And the reason that we do this is because it's much easier to deal with whole numbers adding and subtracting and multiplying than it is to deal with fractions or decimals. But as you can see in the example that we have here, that step 1 is not really going to be an issue, and we'll look at an example later on where we will see how to clear fractions and decimals. Step 2 then says, get rid of all parentheses by distributing, and do not forget to distribute the negative. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the 3, and notice that I like to draw these little arches attaching my 3 to whatever I'm distributing it to. This ensures that I make sure to distribute my 3 across all of my parentheses, and I get 3x plus 6. And now when I distribute the 5, the idea is we're not actually distributing a 5, we're distributing a negative 5. And so we get negative 5x plus 5 because we distribute the negative, and a negative times a negative is a positive. Now on the right hand side of the equation, we distribute the 2, and we get is equal to 2x plus 2. So right now we have 3x plus 6 minus 5x plus 5 is equal to 2x plus 2. Next, step 3 says we're going to combine like terms on each side of the equation separately, which means we're going to look at the left-hand side, and on the left-hand side I see a 3x and a negative 5x, which is going to give me a negative 2x. And then I see a plus 6 and a plus 5, which is going to give me plus 11. And on the right-hand side, there's nothing to combine in this particular example, and so I get negative 2x plus 11 is equal to 2x plus 2. So the next thing we need to do is, using addition or subtraction, we want to move all of our x's to one side of the equation. It doesn't matter if you want to move them all to the left side or to the right side. That's whatever your preference is, that's fine. I have a preference usually to move things to the left-hand side, but whatever you choose is good. And the question is do we want to use addition or subtraction? Well, the idea behind moving anything from one side of the equation to the other is that you're always going to do the inverse. So if I want to take this 2x here and I want to move it to the other side of the equation, I have to do the inverse, which is I have to subtract it. And as you know, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides of our equation. So if it's been a while since you've seen this and you're wondering why am I subtracting 2x, the reason is because on the right-hand side, if you look, 2x minus 2x is just 0. And so the 2x gets crossed off, and we're just left with a 2 on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, I get negative 4x plus 11. So I have successfully completed step 4, which is I have moved all of my x's to one side of the equation. In step 5, I'm now going to focus on moving all of the constants to the other side of the equation. As a reminder, a constant is just a whole number that does not have a variable attached to it, which means that I need to take this 11 here, and I need to move it to the other side. And again, you always do the inverse operation. And since it is a plus 11, I'm going to subtract 11. And again, I'm going to do the same thing to the right-hand side of my equation, because in that way, 11 minus 11 is going to cross off. That gives me 0. And so I'm just left with negative 4x is equal to negative 9. And we're getting close to the end because we can see that x is almost by itself. So step 6 says using division, isolate the variable. Isolate means get the x by itself. And so what we're going to do is we are going to divide both sides by the negative 4. And again, the reason that we do this is because what is negative 4 divided by negative 4? It's just 1. And so on the left-hand side, we're left with just x, which is exactly what we want. On the right-hand side, negative 9 divided by negative 4 just gives me 9/4. And there we go. That is our answer. Now, notice something important about this answer, and that is that not all solutions are nice, pretty whole numbers. Often, most of the time, you are going to get fractions, and often there are also going to be improper fractions. which leads me to the last step, which is check, which really is something always that you should do, assuming you have the time, especially if you're not confident in your work. And check basically says take your x, take the value that you got, and plug it back into your original equation. I am not going to do that here, but that is the basic idea behind solving equations.